My name is Florian Kuplant. I am Brewmaster and co-founder at Chestnut Brewing Company here in St. Louis. I basically do everything from writing the recipes, selecting the ingredients. We have people to help manage with the production, but I kind of oversee the brewing process. So there's two main types of beers. There are ales and there are lagers, and the difference is just in the types of yeasts that are being used. Lagers are typically fermented at lower temperatures and mature for a slightly longer period of time. Ales are fermented at higher temperatures, and typically the process is not quite as long. It's very similar to cooking, where you select different ingredients and then combine them in a different way and hopefully come up with a dish that you enjoy. The four main ingredients for beer are water. Water is actually the most important ingredient because it's typically 90% plus of the product is water. We use malt, which is for the most part barley that gets germinated and then dried. That results in a slightly sweet kernel that we then use to produce sugars that yeast ferments, which brings us to the next ingredient, so to speak, that's yeast. It's a living organism that will consume sugar and produce alcohol and a bunch of flavors. And then the last ingredient is hops, and hops will provide some of the fruitiness, the bitterness for sure. It's really nuances. It's using ingredients that have different qualities. So hops, there's hop varieties that may be a little bit more herbal, spicy, citrusy, versus others that are taste more like grapefruit, have like a tropical flavor. So using those and adding those in different stages of the process, that makes a difference.
We mill the malts, we grind the malt up, and it gets transported into this tank up top. Then we mash it in, we basically combine it with water. It drops into this tank. Then we pump it into the lauter tun. That's the tank that has a false bottom, where we separate the liquid wort, the sugary liquid from the spent grain, the husks.
So mash is basically when we combine water and the milled malt. And malt at that point is mostly starch. And starch is basically a large molecule that is made of sugar. Yeast cannot consume starch, so we have to break the starch down, and that happens during mashing. Malt contains naturally occurring enzymes, and those are molecules that will break down starch into sugar, and then later on, once we've gone through the rest of the brewhouse process, that sugar then gets converted into alcohol. So it's kind of the first crucial step to get us to the final profile of the beer. You really have an impact on how that beer is going to taste by the first step that you're going through. Beer's been around for several thousand years, and it's kind of interesting to look back, and we're still essentially doing the same thing that brewers did 2,000 years ago. It must have always been a great combination of art and science, even back then when science really wasn't very developed, but they still knew what worked, and they knew what they were able to do with certain processes and come up with a good product. There's a management aspect, there's the science aspect, there's the creative side, the art that gets imparted, because it's all very open, and people are very happy to talk about what they are doing in their brewery. So it's you never stop learning, and it's a great way to kind of be connected to the industry.